is the Talk International editor. Isabel, great to have you on the show. How long has Rachel got?
Not very long at all. I mean, the one thing that might preserve her just a little bit longer is just simply the fact that Christmas is coming, and often parliamentary recess is a little bit helpful for ministers in deep trouble. But in my opinion and long experience of observing cabinet ministers in crisis, I don't believe this is survivable, and I don't think it's survivable for both of them. You know, we know from the Liz Truss experience what happens to prime ministers who sack their chancellors. They very soon go down with them, and it's not going to be it's not going to persuade anyone that Rachel Reeves wasn't fully in lockstep with the Prime Minister on this. I mean, we already know they've sort of pretty much said, haven't they, that Keir Starmer knew exactly what was going on and kind of, backed the strategy. So I think they're both finished. I just have never known, in my experience, as say, a whole budget being based on a false premise. You know, the whole budget effectively was based on a massive lie. And I just don't think you can get beyond that. And it doesn't really matter now, the he said, she said, was it a little bit of a lie? Was it a big lie? There is now, I think, a settled view among British voters, whatever their party politics. I'm including Labour voters in this, and we can see this probably from polling today that shows that Labour voters are not very impressed by the budget. And if they're not, well, who the hell is? I think there is a settled view now, however much they thrash around and try to pretend otherwise, that the Chancellor misled voters, and she may well have misled her own colleagues. If she's misled the cabinet, that really is quick terminal rather than slow terminal.
Good day to you all and welcome back to the British Report. If you thought the only thing collapsing in Britain this winter was the national grid or the punctuality of the Northern Line, I have some truly staggering news for you. We have officially entered a period of political history that is less stability and growth and more uncontrolled dumpster fire. Sir Keir Starmer, the man who promised to restore the adults to the room, has just been served a cold dish of reality on live television, not by the opposition, but by the very people who are supposed to be his stalwarts. We are witnessing a moment where the forensic mask has not just slipped, it has been vaporised. The Prime Minister is reportedly in a state of absolute fury as the data comes in, confirming that he is now, quite literally, the most unpopular leader to ever walk the halls of Westminster. It is a demolition of character so complete it makes a Greek tragedy look like a light-hearted sitcom. Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It is free. It takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. Let us dive into the sheer, unadulterated carnage of the latest polling data, because these are not just bad numbers. These are clear the desk and pack your bags numbers. As we see out the year and head into 2026, Sir Keir Starmer is officially the most unpopular Prime Minister in British history. Think about that for a moment. We have had some real stinkers in the past. Leaders who presided over economic meltdowns, wars and scandals, but Starmer has managed to outfail them all in record time. His net favourability has plummeted from a modest 0 when he entered number 10 to a bone-chilling -66. To put that in perspective, Tony Blair, at the very height of the post-Iraq War backlash, only hit -44. Boris Johnson, during the absolute nadir of the Partygate scandal, was at -46. Even Liz Truss, whose premiership lasted approximately as long as a bag of salad, only registered a -51. Starmer is currently at -66. He has achieved a level of public rejection that is statistically breathtaking, and he is not alone in this basement of despair. His Chancellor Rachel Reeves is right there with him, clutching a net favourability rating of -60. She is officially the least popular Chancellor in history, narrowly avoiding the top spot only because Kwasi Kwarteng managed to blow up the pension funds in 45 minutes. But while Kwarteng was a flash in the pan, the dislike for Reeves is deep, calculated, and, as pollsters are now saying, transforming into something far more dangerous, pure loathing. Luke Trial from the organisation More in Common has been conducting focus groups across the country, and the feedback is nothing short of a political autopsy. People aren't just disappointed, they are calling the Prime Minister a liar. The consensus in these groups is that Starmer only said what he thought he needed to say to get elected, and now that he has the keys to the castle, the drawbridge has been pulled up.
So Rachel Reeves possibly may not make it through the rest of this week, Isabel. What about the timeline for Sir Keir Starmer and his tenure in office?
I mean, can we just for a moment dwell on that little clip that you've just played there? Does any one of our listeners and viewers know what he's talking about? Because I don't know what he's talking about. That to me just sounded like gobbledygook. I can't make head nor tail of it. And part of the reason I can't make head nor tail of it is, in a sense, even though I'm trying to listen to it, I've zoned out with Keir Starmer. He just drones and talks word salad, and it's meaningless. And, you know, if a political commentator like me struggles to concentrate when the Prime Minister opens his mouth, then imagine the absolute torpor of the rest of the nation. You know, when they hear Keir Starmer trying to talk his way out in these kind of riddles, I just think everybody stop listening, Prime Minister. They think you lied. They think your Chancellor lied. And the two of you are finished. In answer to your question, how long has Starmer got? How long have they both got? I mean, the word around Westminster is January. So do they stagger through Christmas? I know how this works. You know, if they stagger through Christmas, what Downing Street will hope is that they can do a January relaunch. I mean, we've all been here before, haven't we? You know, with ailing political parties, ailing governments, they do a relaunch in January. Oh, give me strength. That's like relaunching a dinghy with 100 holes in it. That dinghy is sinking, and those two are on it. They're finished.
But the real knife in the back didn't come from a pollster, it came from the very heart of the Labour movement, and it happened in a way that has left Downing Street reeling. The betrayal that has reportedly caused Sir Keir to explode comes from the trade union movement, the very foundation of the Labour Party's house. Sharon Graham, the powerhouse boss of the Unite Union, has effectively declared war. Now, keep in mind that Unite gave over £500,000 to Labour MPs in 2024. They are the bankroll, the muscle and the traditional soul of the party. Yet Graham took to the national press to describe Starmer's leadership as failing. When your biggest donor and your most powerful union ally go on live television and national print to tell the world you are incompetent, you aren't just losing the argument, you are losing the building. The pollsters are calling Starmer a vessel for people's disappointment. It is a poetic way of saying he has become a human lightning rod for every grievance in the country. From crumbling living standards to the absolute state of public services, the public has decided that the change they were promised was a bait and switch. Since 2024, things have not improved at any perceptible pace. Instead, that disappointment has bubbled up into a genuine, visceral anger. Another pollster, speaking to the Financial Times, noted that while Starmer is rather dull, a critique he has heard before, he has managed the remarkable feat of generating incredible levels of hate. It is a strange paradox. How can someone so boring be so intensely disliked? The answer lies in the policies that have felt like a series of targeted attacks on the very people he promised to protect. If the personality ratings are the symptoms, the policies are the disease. And let us be honest, the list of unpopular decisions is starting to look like a manifesto for how to lose an election in 6 months. Let us look at the family farm tax. This wasn't just a policy tweak, it was a declaration of war on the British countryside. For the first time, Labour pushed farms into the inheritance tax bracket, sparking massive protests in central London and across the United Kingdom. Farmers, the literal backbone of our food security, were left feeling like they were being liquidated to pay for Whitehall's incompetence. Then came the national insurance hike for employers. Now remember, the Labour Party pledged on 52 separate occasions during the general election campaign that they would not raise taxes on working people. Apparently, in the world of Starmer maths, the people who provide the jobs for working people don't count. But perhaps the most cold-hearted move was the change to the winter fuel payment. Shortly after entering office, the government decided to means test this benefit, effectively stripping more than 10 million pensioners of the money they rely on to keep the heating on. It was a move so staggeringly unpopular that it united the left and the right in a chorus of condemnation. Rachel Reeves was seen as uncaring, with focus groups saying she was targeting people who cannot fight back. It is one thing to tax the broadest shoulders, as they love to say, but quite another to snatch the coat off a grandmother's back in the middle of November. This is the loathing that Luke Trowell mentioned. It is the feeling that the government isn't just incompetent, it is actively malicious towards specific groups of citizens. And if you think the policy blunders are bad, the flip-flopping has turned the government into a political weather vane that spins so fast it is generating its own wind power.
I think everybody just feels it, don't they? Whatever the official figures say, they can all argue that these experts and economists, whether it's this billion or that billion, these figures don't mean anything to most of us. Hundreds of billions, squillions, I don't know what they mean. We know what we see and what we feel, which is that those of us who work have to work ever harder for ever less return as we see ever more of our hard-earned cash going out the side door to what many of us feel are mostly, not all, but mostly undeserving causes. That's how people feel. And I tell you, also, employers feel it isn't worth it anymore. They don't want to hire people because it's all become too much of a burden. That's how Britain feels at the moment, I think. And, the politicians can talk as much as they like, but it's not going to change that reality.
No.
The U-turns have become a defining feature of this administration. Sir Keir Starmer famously backtracked on his stance regarding the police following massive political pressure and a relentless campaign by the Daily Express. It showed a leader who doesn't have a core philosophy but is instead governed by whichever headline is screaming the loudest that morning. Not to be outdone, Rachel Reeves performed a spectacular flip-flop on the two-child benefit cap. She had previously vowed to keep the cap in place, acting as the fiscal hawk of the Treasury, only to change her mind less than a year later when the internal party pressure became too much to bear. This constant yes-no-maybe approach to governance has destroyed any shred of trust the public had left. You cannot claim to be the grown-up in the room when you are throwing a tantrum every time a focus group tells you something you don't want to hear. The liar label is sticking because the gap between the campaign rhetoric of 2024 and the reality of 2026 is wider than the English Channel. Starmer is now the second most unpopular leader in the entirety of Europe, only narrowly missing the top spot because Emmanuel Macron is currently presiding over a French political landscape that looks like a barricade-heavy fever dream. But being slightly more popular than Macron is like being the tallest person in a nursery. It is not exactly a boast you want to put on your curriculum vitae. So as we stare down the barrel of a new year, the question isn't just will things get better, but can the government even survive its own unpopularity? The disappointment that Luke Trial mentioned has now officially curdled into real anger. When people feel that the person they elected to fix the system is actually just a more dull version of the chaos they replaced, the backlash is inevitable. Starmer and Reeves have become the least popular occupants of their respective offices in the history of British records. That isn't just a bad spell of weather, that is a climate change in British politics. The adults are in the room, but the public is currently trying to kick the door down and demand a refund. The betrayal by his most trusted allies in the unions and the devastating feedback from the Heartland focus groups suggests that the Labour Party is facing an existential crisis. If you can't hold the unions and you can't hold the pensioners and you've alienated the farmers, who exactly is left in the Starmer coalition? The answer, it seems, is a shrinking circle of advisers in number 10 who are currently watching the Prime Minister explode as the reality of his historic unpopularity finally sinks in. The British Report will be here to document the fallout because if 2025 was the year of the policy blunder, 2026 is shaping up to be the year of the political reckoning. Thank you for watching.